Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special meeting of the DeKalb City Council, March 26, 2020. I'll now call this meeting to order, and prior to our roll call this evening, I'd like to make some remarks that are somewhat customary and others may not be. My customary remarks are simply indicating to anyone in our audience tonight, and we do have a few folks live in our audience who would like to make any public comments, to fill out a speaker request form. They're in the foyer in the back of the room. Give those to our executive assistant, Ruth Scott, and she will see that that I get those, and we'll get you on in the proper place and the proper order. We have a number of folks who are participating remotely tonight. We will see that, again, they get on in the appropriate time. Prior to getting on with this special meeting, allow me a minute or two to provide a quick overview of where we are. The City of DeKalb is open for business, even though we're somewhat limited in providing all the essential services folks are accustomed to. Police, fire, finance, water, public works, most administrative activities are taking place. Our employees are being asked to follow the same directives that you are. Keep social distancing, wash your hands, use good common sense when you are traveling around our community. While City Hall has limited access, we urge citizens who need something to call us. Our city manager is keeping his full-time hours, as are a number of municipal building employees. Some have agreed to work at home. Believe me, not everyone agrees with us in our stance as it relates to our being here tonight and our even being in this building during the week. One woman who chose not to ask that her email be read tonight wrote to me and said the decision to hold our council meetings here was appalling. Shame on you, she wrote. As you may know, I have chosen to be in City Hall office, albeit briefly, each and every day. Otherwise, I am home, where I can easily work remotely on most matters. Last night, or I should say Monday night, all aldermen had the option to stay home or appear in these council chambers, where we respectfully abide by the social distancing parameters that you see. On Monday night, all chose to attend. This evening, our first ward alderman, Carolyn Morris, has opted to appear remotely, or at least to be heard remotely. And Carolyn, I take it you're there? Well,
yes, I am.
Good, okay. As long as you can hear me, and when you're called upon, we'll see how this works, okay?
Sounds good, thank you.
Earlier today, in a conference call with mayors and township supervisors from throughout DeKalb County, we provided ourselves a picture of what is happening locally. The DeKalb County Unites initiative, and Jeremy, if you could put up the facing page on the DeKalb County Unites website. This is a initiative spearheaded by NIU, by the DeKalb County Convention and Visitors Bureau, DeKalb County Economic Development Corporation, our local chambers of commerce, and our local business community, as we help our local businesses to financially stay afloat. Additionally, we're in ongoing contact with our state and federal legislators, the Illinois Municipal League, and many local folks, child care facilities, county health facilities. I like to say that we have two C's that we need to be very, very mindful of: collaboration and communication. If we collaborate as a community, and if we communicate with one another as best we can, we're going to, working together, get through this crisis. My pledge on behalf of the city council here and the city of DeKalb is that we're going to do everything to be part and parcel of that very important process. That being said, I would like to have our executive assistant, Ruth Scott, who's filling in tonight for our city clerk, Lynn Fazekas, to kindly call the roll. Ruth?
Morris?
Here.
Fanouken?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Perkins?
Here.
McAdams?
Here.
Verbeek?
Here.
Favor?
Here.
Mayor Smith?
Here.
8 present.
And one final thing for those folks who are watching at home tonight, if you, for whatever reason, because we are somewhat askew tonight in terms of our IT setup, if you cannot hear one of our aldermen, or if you have problems with the telecast tonight, please call our IT technician who's on duty tonight, Jeremy Alexander, and I would ask you to kindly email him immediately at j.alexander@cityofdekalb.com. That's j.alexander@cityofdekalb.com. First order of tonight, and we have a limited agenda, is the approval of that agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Hearing none,
I would like to move. I would like to move that we add to the agenda discussion of meeting remotely, all of us, in the future.
Is that a motion?
Yes, it is.
Alderman Morris would like to move that we add to the agenda a discussion of these meetings and the possibility of remote participation. Does that pretty much say it, Carolyn?
Sort of, but I guess what I'm trying to say is ending in-person meetings.
Okay. I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Hearing no second, that motion dies for lack of a second. Okay, are there any other additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Fanouken, seconded by Alderman Smith. Roll call, please.
Morris?
No.
Fanouken?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
McAdams?
Yes.
Verbeek?
Yes.
Favor?
Yes.
Mayor Smith?
Yes.
7 yes.
Thank you. The agenda is approved as printed tonight. We move along now to item D, public participation. Again, I think I indicated if anybody would like to speak to any item on the agenda, or for that matter, any item not on the agenda, they're more than welcome to fill out the speaker request form. We do have a number of folks who have used our new online submission form, and it's working very, very well. And we have a number of those folks. I would like to read the first item, and then I have a comment or two prior to reading a couple of more under D, public participation. The first one, and these are the order that they received, most of them, was submitted by Sean Langley of 364 Rolfe Road, DeKalb. An open letter to the DeKalb City Council. On the night of November 12, 2019, two cars drove through the historic Elwood neighborhood, shooting at one another. At his Fifth Ward meeting on February 29, 2020, when questioned about the violence in DeKalb, particularly the said incident, Alderman Scott McAdams made the following statement. There was an incident online. I came home from City Council and there was a conversation taking place about a shooting where there was a 9-year-old girl caught in the crossfire of 2 gangbangers in cars. The investigation of that said that the shots fired report was false. They never found any shell casings. They never found any bullets. There was no 9-year-old who reported the crime. And that crime that appeared on Facebook does not appear in city records because there was no report made. The letter goes on to say, the residents of Rolfe Road take issue with his statement as it is, on all accounts, false. At least 3 of our neighbors called in the activity to the DeKalb Police Department. We FOIA'd Mr. McAdams' alleged text conversation with Chief Pietrogallo, and no records were found regarding the November 12 shooting. Commander Lekes, Commander Riddell, and Chief Pietrogallo have all stated to one of our residents that shots were fired and confirmed shell casings were recovered, that reports were made, and per our FOIA request, case 1909380, reported on November 12, 2019 at 6:40 p.m., continues to be an open and ongoing investigation. By spreading false information so confidently at his February 29 meeting, Scott McAdams has proven he's not dedicated to responsibly representing his constituents in the 5th Ward. At the very least, the residents of Rolfe Road would like our alderman to take seriously our concern for our neighborhood's safety. Our hope is that in the future, Mr. McAdams will be more diligent about his fact gathering before speaking publicly. Signed, Kate Cardella, Sean Langley, Kathleen Campbell, Patty Perkins, Julie Arndt, and Sally DeFaw. When I first saw this letter, my reaction was whether or not we should read this at all. I felt the first person that I needed to chat with was Alderman McAdams, which I did. Scott said, fine, I'm fine with you reading that letter. I then contacted each and every city council alderman, and they were very comfortable with my reading this letter, as uncomfortable as it may be. I know that Alderman McAdams would like to speak to this letter, and he has agreed that he would make those comments during the conclusion of tonight's meeting, at which time all of our aldermen have any report or any comments that they'd like to make. Scott, does that still hold true?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's move on then to the second letter. This is from Dan Shuey, 1316 Elizabeth Street, DeKalb. Dear Jerry, after my wife Kathy and I watched the City of DeKalb Council meeting on Monday from the comfort of our home, I felt moved to send you a message. These are difficult days, and our spirits were buoyed by the knowledge that the government of our fair city is in good hands. So here's a big thank you to all the people who make our city council meetings something to be very proud of. Thank you, Mayor Smith, for running the meetings in such a civil and productive manner, and for being a great ambassador for DeKalb. Thank you, Bill Nicholas, for working so hard to bring great efficiency, new ideas, and a sense of teamwork and camaraderie in your role as city manager. Thank you to all of our city council members who work tirelessly on behalf of the citizens of DeKalb, each bringing a unique set of skills and knowledge to the council. And thank you to city staff and others behind the scenes who contribute so much to this great city. In summary, thank you, thank you, thank you. Signed, Dan and Kathy Shuey, DeKalb. Our next speaker who would like to speak during public participation is in person, and that is Matt Duffy, the Executive Director of the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce. Matt?
Good evening, council members, Mayor Smith, and city staff, people in attendance online. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Matt Duffy, and I'm the executive director for the DeKalb Chamber of Commerce. The DeKalb Chamber is an organization made up of approximately 600 businesses in our community. The majority of those members are small businesses, including many of the restaurants and hotels in the area. Today's business climate has changed very quickly, and changes need to be made as quickly to avoid drastic impact to DeKalb. Just as the effects of coronavirus are greatest to the most vulnerable, the quick and drastic changes in business affect the most vulnerable of our business community, small businesses. The DeKalb Chamber supports the recommendation by city staff to provide tax relief for local restaurant, bars, and hotel motels. This is a positive action by the city of DeKalb to provide some help during this unprecedented time, and we all know that much more needs to be done. Small businesses are the lifeblood of the DeKalb community, and additional changes that provide support needed should be considered at this time. We know that more is being done from everyone in our community as DeKalb County unites to work through our current challenges, referring to the website that Mayor Smith mentioned earlier. We may not know yet the extent of the effects of this crisis. However, immediate assistance to local small businesses can at least help offset some of the losses experienced during the short term and prevent more drastic outcomes. I'd like to thank all of you for your consideration to this matter and for taking the time to come out today to make sure that quick action is taken before things get even worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We have a number of other speakers or letters to be read, and those will be read almost immediately as we move out of public participation and into new business, under which the remainder of the comments will be coming. So we have one item of new business, and that's ordinance 2020-022, amending Chapter 55, Hotels and Motels, Section 55.04, Transmittal of Tax Revenue, and Chapter 60, Restaurant, Bar, and Package Liquor Tax, Section 60.8, Failure to File Return and Pay Tax to provide economic relief related to COVID-19. Initially, I'd like a motion on the floor to bring this to the floor.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved by Alderman McAdams, seconded by Alderman Favor. Prior to having Bill Nicholas, our city manager, provide some background, Bill, we do have some folks who would like to speak to this item or who have a comment. The first is from John Finn of 824 West Lincoln Highway. His comments are short and sweet. I believe that the loss of business that all of us are suffering, that not paying this tax would help. Anything the city can do to free up some money being paid out at this time would be great. Signed, John Finn, Pizza Villa. The next online submission came from Pramit Patel, Hampton Inn, DeKalb. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Pramit Patel. I am the owner of the Hampton Inn and the Home 2 Suites under construction, and also a graduate of NIU. First of all, I want to thank Mayor Smith, Bill Nicholas, council members, and the entire city staff for everything they're doing for the community and the businesses within during this time of crisis. There is nothing none of us have ever faced before, and the current environment is changing daily, if not hourly. We as a community are lucky to have such great leadership from our local leaders. Hotels were the first ones affected by COVID-19 and will be the last to recover. Travel in general started to decrease at the beginning of the year as the effects of virus were felt across the globe, long before any shelter in place had been implemented in the United States. Even with recent predictions of the economy possibly having a sharp recovery, hotels, restaurants, and bars will have a much slower slope of recovery since large gatherings and sporting events are still planned on being canceled, even after the shelter-in-place is lifted. Visiting sports teams are a huge revenue generator for the majority of small businesses, but hotels, restaurants, and bars will get hit with the biggest impact from these cancellations. Knowing that the whole hotel industry is cyclical, any good operator will plan to keep reserves for economic downturns, but this situation is very different. In previous recessions, the occupancy for hotels had dropped between 15 to 20% from the highs. With COVID-19, our occupancy numbers have dropped 85 to 90%. No amount of planning or reserve allocation could have prepared us for this. Unfortunately, with occupancy in the single digits, any reserve would run dry within a matter of weeks to months. This is not a recession for hotels, but rather a depression. I am hopeful that the economy will be back up and running in a month or two, but hotels, restaurants, and bars will be suffering long after the economy is open for business. I, like many other small business owners across the country, have had to let go of 80 to 90% of our staff. This is something that was done with much trepidation and anguish, but the only other alternative was shutting down the business and letting everyone go. Any help the city can provide now is greatly appreciated. Help from the federal government has been slow, so immediate help from local municipalities is the only option we currently have left. The next 2 or 3 months will be the hardest for us, and we're given the opportunity to defer tax payments, and if we are given the opportunity to defer tax payments for a few months, then we stand a fighting chance to come out of this with no more than a few battle scars. This is definitely a time of fear and stress for the majority of us, but I find solitude in the fact that we are all in this together, and so we will come out of it together. Thank you, and wishing everyone good health. Pramit Patel. I have 2 submissions from Mark Shavat, 102 Cobblestone Trail, DeKalb. The first one reads thusly: Mayor, Council, City staff, and citizens watching at home, I think it is imperative that the city go beyond the recommendations that have been brought forth for consideration. Specifically, in reference to the bar and restaurant tax, the consideration before you proposes to continue collecting bar and restaurant taxes from the customer. I believe that both the citizens and bars and restaurants could be helped. If the city opted to not collect the 1.75% restaurant and bar tax until this crisis is over. Under the scenario provided in the backup, restaurants and bars would continue to collect the tax from customers, but they would not be required to remit the taxes back to the city. Let's put a stop to collecting the 1.75% tax from restaurant and bar patrons. This would allow the city of DeKalb to let the community know we're open for business, we want your business, and you won't have to pay as much. By lowering the cost to dine out or carry out for the time being, restaurants could possibly see an increase in volume. This increase would more than offset the loss of revenue that they are currently experiencing. Having 1 or 2 more diners in a day would bring in more revenue to the restaurants and bars. The city would still get its share of the state sales tax and more as a result of higher traffic. I would suggest now is the time our city council can show that it's business-friendly and consumer-friendly at the same time. Think outside the box. People like buying things on sale. You could not only do something good for the restaurants and bars, but also could do something good for the citizens of our community. Signed, Mark Sharvat, 4th Ward. We have one more letter from Mark Sharvat. One of the points I brought forth was the possibility of discontinuing tax increment financing when he submitted comments on Monday night that were read into the record by Mayor Smith. Put all projects on hold and return the money back to the taxpayers. The city manager in the same meeting told council that unless something is done in Springfield, the city cannot change the way tax increment financing money is spent. Yes, I'm aware of that. However, what he did not tell you is at the end of each year, the city council has the ability to declare a surplus. Declaring a surplus on TIF funds will allow the city of DeKalb to spend its share of the surplus any way it chooses. The money is no longer considered TIF after it is returned to the taxing bodies, including the city of DeKalb. I won't go through all the details, but we're already read into the record on Monday. But I think it's important that the city manager explain how a surplus on TIF funds works. I suggest that money goes to assist existing businesses and those in our community who are in need. Your constituents are rather angry about the fact that we keep funneling taxpayer money into projects put forth by millionaire developers. Let's put the taxpayer money to work for your constituents. With the shortfall of tax dollars that is likely to result from this shutdown of business, the city needs to start planning on cutting services, hiring management and all full-time positions, and other fluff out of the current budget. Let's not wait until later to look at this. The time to plan is now. Submitted, Mark Charvat, 4th Ward. Okay, I've got some voice left. I've got no more letters to read, I don't believe, but I would like to call on Brad Hoy, who would like to speak to this item. Brad?
Thank you, Mayor Smith, City Council members, city staff, and folks watching and listening online. I'll be very brief. I think that my colleague Matt Duffy and some of the letters have expressed the sentiments of myself as a citizen of the city of DeKalb, as a member of the Community Enhancement Commission, and also representing the DeKalb County Convention and Visitors Bureau. Appreciate the proactive efforts by the city to address this unprecedented situation that we now find ourselves in, and to look out for the best interests of our small businesses, not only here in the city of DeKalb, but throughout DeKalb County. Obviously, as Matt alluded to, and as Mr. Patel and Mr. Finn also did in their letters, the hospitality industry, the hotel, the motel industry, and travel and tourism in general is probably one of the businesses that is most adversely affected by the shelter-in-place mandates with COVID-19. I believe the city has been very proactive in their efforts to address the concerns of small businesses in this community, going back to as early as last week with the meeting that they had with small businesses and other concerned citizens. So I appreciate your consideration of these, again, unprecedented measures before the city to address the hardships that our small businesses are facing, not only in the city, but throughout the county and throughout the country. So appreciate your leadership and your concern during this challenging time. We're all in this together, and we will all get through this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Okay, we move along now to our one item of new business, item E, new business, ordinance 2020-022. I guess I've read that, and we've had a motion on the floor and a second. We've had some comment, and now I'm going to turn it over to our city manager, Nicholas.
I could read it
Who
again.
may be more organized than I am.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for meeting tonight. I think at the meeting on Monday night, our regular meeting, the council did some extraordinary and very responsive things. And basically what we were doing on Monday night was responding to the first set of orders and guidance that came out from the governor's office with respect to the closing of restaurants and bars except for takeout, drive-through, and pickup. And we had conversation, as Brad referred to, about a week ago this past Tuesday with any interested managers and owners who could show up at a meeting. We observed the 6-foot safety limits and televised that. Got a lot of response, and I know that aldermen were engaged by constituents on the same topics. And so on Monday night, the council did two things, that those restaurants that carry a liquor license but don't have a package liquor license were enabled to sell beer and wine only with carryout meals through June 30th. So try to get some more foot traffic in and out of our local restaurants. Also, we took steps to defer the full weight of the cycle of new license fees that is going to be hitting at various times, April, August, and November, I believe, or December, all of our liquor establishments. And so that we could put off in 3 installments if they chose the full payment of those renewal fees until December 31st. So there was a deferral approach. And just in recent days, we have been observing what is happening around the state and other communities, and I just gave you one example as attachment to tonight's agenda, which is what is happening in Rockford. And some other communities, so far, the general response beyond what we did on Monday night has been to consider, in some cases approve, the deferral of the payment of restaurant bar taxes until a later point in the year. So it doesn't forgive or suspend or put a moratorium on them, but it gives a breathing room, and it varies. In Rockford, it's not quite as elastic as it is in some other places, where it allows, in some cases, the payment of those taxes that might have been accrued in the first quarter in the third quarter of the year to get us over what is likely to be another month or weeks of additional shuttering of bars and restaurants except for limited activity. What's on the agenda tonight goes beyond that, as some of the speakers tonight have said. What is proposed is pretty direct, not real complicated. It is, in the case of restaurant and bar taxes, that businesses would continue to collect those taxes, but would retain 100% of what they collect until they hit the threshold based on their monthly tax returns of $3,000, and then anything beyond that is due and owing as it would be under normal circumstances. And looking at I'm just going to race through this and be happy to answer any questions. Looking at the 126 businesses that we have currently remitting those taxes on a regular basis, that the largest exposure or the total exposure would be $378,000 if all businesses stayed open, and that's at a level of activity which we haven't seen for the last 2 weeks and probably won't see for some weeks yet ahead. So I think that is a larger number than what we might actually see. It might be closer to 250,000, somewhere in that vicinity. The other aspect of this ordinance before you tonight is a section that deals with hotel motel taxes and with a similar approach. It's talking not about deferring the payment, but actually giving a credit of up to $6,000 per hotel or motel. And there are 6 payers right now. We don't have any that are likely to open by April 1st. And in both cases, with restaurant bar taxes and with hotel motel taxes, we're limiting the impact to those that were doing business on or before April 1st. I just want to make that clear to you. And we know there's another hotel that's going to come on sometime later in the year. It would not apply to them because presumably by the time it comes on, we will be through to the end of this crisis. So that is what's before you tonight. I recognize this is an untypical approach. There are a lot of assumptions related to what I've proposed to you tonight that I can't say are extraordinarily reliable. We're all guessing. None of us can say how long this current crisis will last. Another thing we don't know is the impact on other city sales taxes, the 1% that we collect, and And except for food, drugs, and automobiles, our local home rule tax, the 1.75% tax. So despite that, I have presented some numbers that Ray Munch and I crunched this week on page 4 of your background report, and it's online for people to see who are looking in tonight. And we made several different scenarios for you to review, and we put the whole array of the sales and use taxes that might fall on restaurants and bars in there, and we showed you what we had expected in the budget, what would happen if we saw a 5%, a 10%, a 15%, or a 20% reduction in the worst case of the sales and use taxes altogether. And you can see the number ranges depending at the low end from 1.1 million to a little over $3 million. And where would that money come from by the end of the year? What's the question was asked at the last meeting, can we prepare some background that speculates about ways we could offset, whether it's $1 million or $3 million or $500,000 or whatever the number ends up being. And there aren't a lot of,
exiting.
I didn't hear that. Okay. There aren't a lot of options. Even if we can defer the hiring or the refilling of some positions that are likely to come up this year, that's not going to create a lot of revenue for us. We have collective bargaining agreements that have some clauses which allow us to open certain clauses for renegotiation under extraordinary circumstances. Here we are 2 weeks in, so I don't know if we could make that legal test yet. Obviously, we're feeling it and others are feeling it, but in these matters, there needs to be some kind of a timeline that we can report this was the impact. And right now, we're still getting sales and use tax data from before the crisis started, so it's hard to make that case just yet. So in the long run, it's the general fund reserve balance that is available to you, and we have always looked upon that as, some people call it a rainy day fund. That's not a great, we got a lot of rainy days and we don't tap into it, but this is, I think, in a common sense notion of what a rainy day is. This is as rainy as it gets, and it could get worse. So the thing is, it takes a lot of time to rebuild that. We don't. As we look out over the next couple of years, we've been working very hard to broaden and diversify our tax base, and I'm happy to say we've made some progress in that, and we're on the cusp of making some additional progress. But the realization of that benefit from that is going to be deferred for a couple of years. So in the meantime, almost any of these, in fact, any of these options would reduce the reserve balance as a percent of the annual expenditures below the 25% threshold, and so further council action would be required to allow that to happen if we were to dip into the reserve balance. So I just wanted to set that scene for you. That's a broader context. I've also promised that for the council's benefit, as we get some more returns from the state, in a little less than 6 weeks, we should be able to give you a better prediction of where we'll be with the continuing crisis.
Change, 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 almost every hour, very fluid. Okay, we've heard the city manager's explanation of what we had asked him to come back with after our meeting on, our part of our meeting on Monday night. I think he has done what he feels is the best option, and I'll open it up now for any comments or questions before we take a vote on this economic relief plan. Alderman Fanouken.
The fact that we're going to allow the business to continue to collect won't have a significant impact on an individual customer. I mean, on a $50 order, it's only an extra $1 city tax. So that's, in the whole scheme of things, a relatively insignificant amount. But the cumulative effect of multiple orders for a particular business is going to be a significant impact for that business. So if a business does, eventually gets that $3,000 to the ceiling, that will help them get through this crisis, particularly for some of the smaller businesses that may do a volume of business. I think particularly of Bill's Lincoln Inn, I think that'll make a difference for him. But some of the other places, Pizza Villa, from John Finn, some of the other places in town that we've heard of. So it's not the individual purchase itself that's very significantly impacted, but the cumulative effect for the businesses is where we're really trying to reach out here.
So, thank you for your comment, Alderman Fanouken. So, what you see in this proposed ordinance fits the bill as it relates to you?
Yes, sir.
Your thoughts? Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? Alderman McAdams.
I would like to state my support as well. I believe it's imperative that we help our business community get through this crisis. I believe this is a temporary fix. I don't believe this is a permanent issue. And I believe our citizens are more than happy to support our small businesses. And I appreciate that our citizens do that.
Thank you, Alderman McAdams. Any other comments? Alderman Perkins.
And the one thing you touched on, one thing, Mayor, before. The one thing we do know is everything changes every day.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that really troubles me, though, is where is this recovered in the budget? We all want to help everything, and I don't want to confuse the desire to help the small business with, I don't want to pretend that I'm not trying to help the small business. But the reality of it is we had a budget that was balanced, and it was a very tight effort to balance the budget. And literally we're eliminating a revenue source with no view of where we're recovering that. I would understand, and I'd understand more communities have deferred. I think deferring is a conservative way, and then we could make a decision as more details emerge, as they're sure to in coming days and weeks. That's just my big question, is we put a lot into the budget, and this effectively unbalances the budget in some way. We haven't given any consideration to where we're recovering those things, and that makes me a little uneasy. And then I'm certainly as concerned about the small business as everyone else is. We all are. So.
Thank you. Alderman Fanouken.
Greg, I'm going to say that I appreciate your comments and understand where you're coming from, but none of us, I think, have ever faced a catastrophe such as this. And I think that we're going to have to not really think of in terms of balancing a budget, but how are we going to respond with the resources we do have? And that's going to mean that we're going to have to make adjustments as we go along. The next meeting in 2.5 weeks, we may have to make changes to this. We may have to make changes to something else. I think for right now, the immediate impact is going to help the local businesses. We still have another 8 months in the calendar year, 9 months in the calendar year, where we can see if we can recover or make some adjustments as we go along. As City Manager Nicholas talked about already, we can defer some hiring. We can do some other things that will help abate some of this loss. But I think that we really have to react to the catastrophe that we're faced with and not make it worse by not bailing out these small businesses now, because if we lose, even if we lose 10 of them, that's going to be a more significant impact on the long-term budget than just what we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Alderman Verbeek.
And I think that, again, our fund balance, our rainy day fund at 25% is that marker that we really need to keep an eye on. That's protecting our city operations. That's our core services, police, fire, streets. So again, whatever we can do above and beyond what we really need to retain as a city is where I'm at. Again, I agree, Alderman Fanouken, extenuating circumstances. That's why we're here. It is our leadership to see this real challenge through. And I would say that whatever we can do, again, with that 25% fund balance in place, we need to consider it.
You know, what we have to, in my perspective too, what we have to realize is that the reason we're here tonight is because we wanted to do something quickly. We wanted to send the message and get the message out that this city council is in a position to do something, albeit perhaps small, if some look upon it as small, it is something. And, you know, I don't want to wait. We didn't want to wait until April 13th to do something to address this issue. There are going to be various state and federal programs as it relates to stimulus, and so many of those are available on the state of Illinois, coronavirus.illinois.gov, that I would encourage our local and small businesses to go and look at those, because the city of DeKalb, what we're saying tonight, I think, is we're going to do our part. We want to do our part. And by passing this ordinance tonight as projected, and Greg, I agree with you wholeheartedly, we have to take a look at the big picture in terms of the budget. But right now, we just need to do whatever we can to protect our small businesses in the city of DeKalb. Alderman Verbeek.
And
Mayor?
Yes, we haven't heard from you, Carolyn, so I'm gonna call on you. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Sure.
I just want to share my support for this. I'm really thrilled that our city manager was able to come up with something like this quickly. I think that places that we can maybe hope to see some sort of return to replace this money from would be, maybe this is overly optimistic, but our cannabis taxes. That's a new revenue source that we haven't really accounted for yet. And hopefully that local dispensary, maybe it'll get going and show some progress for us in the future. That's all.
Very good. And you're coming through loud and clear, Alderman Morris. You're doing good, so. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Alderman Verbeek and then Alderman Favor.
And any thoughts we could have on engaging the Finance Advisory Committee early? I know typically they get started once we have some initial budget numbers, return numbers and that type of thing, but I think for council to think about what could be those things that the Finance Advisory Committee could work through in conjunction with staff, that again, to me, it's all-in effort on what we can accomplish to survive this thing.
Thank you. Mike, Alderman Favor?
Yeah, I'm in favor of the proposal here. Alderman Perkins, I hear your concern. I appreciate your concern as well. You know, I consider this, again, it's if you talk to mayors in major metropolitan areas, if you listen to other people in the news, they talk about how this is absolutely impossible to manage this crisis that's going on right now, and we're doing our best to try and work through that. It's completely unforeseen, and I don't want to say that's why we have it is why we have our fund balance surplus, why we asked for to have that money on hand in times of this. So I don't feel bad, you know, if we're very careful in how we use that money, or whether the fund falls below the 25% this year. I'm okay with that. We will do what we've done in the past, and we'll make choices that put the money back into the fund next year, and if it takes a year or two to do that, we can do that. And I know that city staff, city manager are going to work to, you know, we're not going to look at, I'm sure we've already done this, started looking at all of our expenses and things that we don't need to do. I'm sure we don't have any travel planned to go to any seminars or conferences. So again, I just don't want to say, let's go and spend the surplus. I'm just saying, I'm okay with dipping into it this year. This is really unforeseen, that rainy day, that, whatever, the 100-year flood that's come to DeKalb. So I'm okay with it. I think it's fantastic. To the mayor's point, we may be back here in 2 weeks to talk about some additional needs within our community. But I think this is just a great start. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Faber. Alderman Smith and then Alderman Perkins.
I'm 100% behind this. I made it known. Alderman Fanouken and I and Alderman Perkins, actually I agree with everybody here. We've got a long road ahead of us, but we have to start somewhere. I agree that we lose a couple, 3 businesses, our revenue is going to dip, below what we're expending now. I think to keep people going forward is what we need to do. Yeah, I'm concerned about the budget in the long run, but I think we've made some wise decisions in the last few months. We have some development hopefully coming forward. We have some in progress that I think will back up what we're doing tonight. So I think the whole key is for all of us just to be hopeful that this gets over quickly and we can keep everybody going forward from here on.
Thank you, Alderman Smith. Alderman Perkins.
I guess I do want to make one clarification. And the clarification is that I believe we need to do something. I believe there are steps we can do along the way. I think a reasonable first step is a deferral on the payments. Because if you look at it from a business perspective, we're doing 2 things here with this. From a business perspective, the tax is recognized at the point the revenue is recognized. And at the same time, what we're saying is we're going to give that revenue to the small businesses, which I understand. But then the cash flow impact on the businesses is when they have to pay the tax. And I think that's something, that's a step along the way. We can defer the tax payment for a period of time so that they don't have that cash crunch. And that's kind of one of the, I do believe we need to do something. And any little bit helps. But I think as we go forward, I don't want to lose sight of the value in deferring that cash payment piece of the taxes.
Thank you, Alderman Perkins. Any other thoughts? Any other comments? Okay.
Mayor, just 2 quick things.
City Manager Nicholas.
Just to pick up on Councilmember Perkins' thought, I think others have said it, there's no right or wrong answer here. We're all reaching and trying to do something. What Councilmember Perkins suggested, the idea of a deferral first, which has in the short run the same effect. You're not paying a tax, but then that tax becomes due and you can spread it out. The one thing I didn't have time to do in 36 hours was to show a hybrid of what you have before you tonight. I'm not trying to complicate things here. But that was something along the lines of what Councilmember Perkins was saying, but with a window of repayment to our, or restoration of our reserve and our budget, not by the end of the year, but basically, and this is where the possibility of the Finance Advisory Committee and so forth. I think we're already in that territory where we're talking about a 2-year, we'll have a 1-year budget, but really a 2-year recovery plan for the city. Just like a business is not thinking we're out of this by the end of May and by July 1st we're kicking and we've restored. That isn't going to happen. It just can't happen in the sheer numbers of it. The arithmetic doesn't work. Same with us. Anytime we dip into the tune of anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million, we gained $2 million in our general fund reserve last year, but we had two fortuitous events, and both were TIF related, and it was the end of a TIF, and we hadn't done that in 35 years, and there was a surplus for us, and then also the closing of TIF 2, and then also the rise of TIF 3. So that helped, and we could use it for general purposes. It went into our reserve. Guess what? We hit the 25% threshold. So the short of what I'm saying is, I think if you wanted, and I know action is imperative, but if you wanted to have another special meeting on Monday night, I could give you that hybrid if you want to go there. If you don't want to go there, then you can take action tonight, certainly, and we'll do what you direct.
We've had some excellent discussion. Any further items, any further questions before we vote on this ordinance proposal? If not, roll call, please.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
I'd like to move that we waive second reading and approve.
Second.
That ordinance was approved on first reading. We have a motion by Alderman Fanouken and a second by Alderman McAdams that we waive second reading and pass this ordinance. Any discussion? Roll call.
Smith,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
McAdams,
Yes.
Verbic,
Yes.
Favor,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Fanouken,
Yes.
Mayor Smith,
Yes.
8 yes.
We do have one other consideration that this is not an action item, but I know City Manager Nicholas would like to review on consideration of further action by the Liquor Commissioner.
Just as a matter of information, as the mayor said to the council and to the community, and this can take place tomorrow, people basically just call the mayor, who's a liquor commissioner, and say this is what we want to do, and we'll record their interest. One thing is that the Liquor Control Commission, following Governor Pritzker's executive order March 16th, allowed liquor license holders with the authority to sell liquor off premises, and you've created that now in package form, to conduct home deliveries. So a person could actually call and say, I'd like something, and the only exceptions here are those brew pubs and distilling pubs that are basically, taking off the liquor from the tap, and they would have to put it in a plastic. It's not a more durable container. At least that was the state's differentiation. The other thing is that after talking with the mayor, there are some liquor license renewals that are cycling and due before April 30th, and the proposal here that the mayor has agreed to is to defer those renewals until June 30th, the end of the second quarter. So that may provide some help. Those, on the whole, tend to be anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000. That's a chunk.
In both of those provisions, I as acting, or I as the mayor, I'm also liquor commissioner, I approve of those two items. Okay, Alderman Favor?
I had just a follow-up question. So, because I actually saw an ad for something, so a growler or any beer that's been tapped is not available for...
That's the guidance from the Illinois Liquor Control Commission. It said specifically that the exception of the brew pubs and the distilled, fresh from the barrel or the tap. I suppose they could, as much as a vendor could put them into it wouldn't be necessarily a sealed vessel. So that's the latitude we have, and I don't think we can unilaterally do something else.
We've had one call that I personally took yesterday, and I know we had another inquiry, I think, to our executive assistant today regarding margaritas that are not prepackaged, and I just simply said it's a beer and wine scenario, not the margaritas. Tony?
Then just to be clear, so it has to be in a can or in a unopened sealed wine bottle or bottle of beer or can of beer?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Smith?
But that's to be delivered.
That's to be the part to be delivered.
Correct. So I think we're talking the same thing. We could pick it up, so.
You can still pick up,
Correct.
if the store is a package license, you can still walk in and.
Or drive-through.
Right.
Yeah, or drive through.
So I think Alderman Faber and I ate at the same place last night, so,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
You and I are, they have to pick it up there.
Okay?
Okay, no, I'm still confused, so I'm sorry. I just ask another clarifying question. So I can pick up a growler from a brew pub, or
you can
I can
walk
pick
in.
up a jug of beer from a brew pub?
Well, if currently under the packaged liquor license provisions, you were able to do that, that is not diminished in any way, that authority. But what the council did on Monday night and what we have a latitude to do under the state guidance is to allow people who aren't in the packaged liquor license business, or don't have a license, but they can do beer and wine on delivery.
Packaged
And now
goods
they
on
can actually
delivery.
just make home deliveries,
Yep.
so.
Okay, thank you.
Are we clear on that then?
Yeah,
We'll drink to that?
you can't send them to the city hall, but.
Yeah, okay. That concludes action on our one consideration tonight and our comments on our second consideration regarding the liquor. I would like, before we adjourn, to allow our city council to have any comments or a report from their ward, and we'll start once again with Carolyn Morris from our first ward.
No comment, thank you.
Alderman Fanouken, second ward.
I'd just like to reiterate what we've all heard probably 1,000 times by now. Wash your hands, sanitizer, social distancing, stay home unless it's an essential trip. It's very important that we try and contain this before it goes any further. I'm sure you've heard that there were total deaths in Illinois now are up to 26, and nationwide it's, I believe, over 1,000 now. So please continue to do the right thing. Thank you.
Alderman Smith, third ward.
No comment.
Alderman Perkins, fourth ward.
No report.
Alderman McAdams, I know you had a few comments.
I
Fifth
do.
ward.
I want to address the general issue of crime in the city, and then specifically the issue brought up. I confidently walk around the city of DeKalb at any hour of the day in any neighborhood, fully confident that our police department does everything that they can do to keep our citizens safe. That confidence is not shared by everyone in our city. There's a lot of anxiety and dis-ease over the issue of crime, and it's a legitimate feeling. I want to make sure that our citizens have the correct information, so when necessary, I will step in online to try and correct the information that is being given out in real time. There is an active investigation into this case, and I'm confident that the police are doing everything that they can do. But the ruminating over past incidents will often agitate our anxiety and unease, and I urge our citizens to have confidence that their police department does everything that they can to keep us all safe.
Thank you, Alderman McAdams. Alderman Verbeek, sixth ward.
There's not enough thanks available to our first responders and our healthcare workers out there. I can't imagine what that call to duty entails, but just sitting from Ward 6, we thank you very much. Also, with regard to the ordinance passed this evening, if we could have an update with each of our meetings as to where we stand and how that's progressing, I think it should just be an agenda item from here to forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Favor, seventh ward.
No report.
Let's continue to collaborate, work together, and let's continue to communicate. We need to communicate and let each other and our different organizations up to speed on what it is that we're all doing here as we progress over the next few days and next few weeks. With that, I would see if our executive assistant, Ruth Scott, do you have any thoughts, any report?
No, sir, no report.
And the city manager, Nicholas.
First, thank you, Councilmember Verbeek and Councilmember McAdams, for your kind comments about our first responders. I couldn't agree with you more. And I want to just say thank you to this council and the mayor for digging in, rolling up your sleeves, and doing what we feel we can do to help our local businesses. And your willingness to take quick action, I think, is a real compliment. And I appreciate what you do, and I'm very happy to serve you.
I thank all of you who attended tonight. I especially appreciate those who have submitted our online submission form for their comments and public participation, and on the one item that we discussed tonight. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn this special meeting of the DeKalb City Council.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Alderman Smith, seconded by Alderman Verby. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.